Yeah, okay. Can you see my screen?
Yeah, Vilas.
Yeah, okay. Okay, we can begin from A17. Documents and the need for completion of a box, field, or space. The fact that a document has a box, field, or space for data to be inserted does not necessarily mean that such box, field, or space is to be completed. For example, data are not required in the box title accounting information or handling information commonly found on an variable. Also see paragraph 837 in respect of requirements of a signature to appear in any box, field, or space. So this is something which is very common. Like you may have a fixed template in a document which is presented. So any document may have a fixed template, and then the data that needs to be filled in, it's based on the requirement of that particular transaction, right? Let me give you an example here. Yeah. So see, this is an airway bill. So in airway bill, this can be a common template of this particular airline company, right? So if they have given all these details like shipper details, consignee details, issuing carriers details, and then if you see a box wherein it is said accounting information, should the accounting information be present just because there is a provision? Definitely not, because it is just a template. So for example, if they don't have the issuing carriers details, they will not fill this. Similarly, if you see account number, agents, IATA code, they don't have that, so they will not fill that. So just because there is a provision and a box provided, you should not look for an information in every box or a provision that is given in a document. So that's what they say. Like the moment you see a provision, don't expect any information on that. You can just disregard and you can move on. When you check the document, it's based on what documentary credit requires and what is that which is required as per UCP and ISBP that you need to validate in the document. The rest of the information can be left unattended. Like even if there is a provision, it can be left blank. So for signature, similarly, like the data which we have referred to, this particular paragraph talks about the data, and then A37 talks about the signature. We will just read that when we go to A37. There is no requirement for applicant name, address, and contact details, if any, to appear in a specific box, field, or space on an invoice. These details need not be identified by the heading or prefix applicant. So this is a new addition which was not there in the previous one. So similarly, the applicant details need not be specifically given in an invoice. Even if there is a specific field or specific field for space for that applicant details, they need not add that. Of course, it is something which an invoice should be made out to applicant, but should they be giving that in that specific heading, in that specific provision? Not necessarily. It can be anywhere. Documents for which the UCP 600 transport articles do not apply. Documents commonly used in relation to the transportation of goods, such as but not limited to delivery note, delivery order, cargo receipt, forwarder certificate of receipt, forwarder certificate of shipment, forwarder certificate of transport, forwarder's cargo receipt, and mate's receipt are not transport documents as defined in UCP 600 Article 1925. These documents are to be examined only to the extent expressly stated in the credit, otherwise according to UCP Article 14F. So, the 19 to 25, you know what are all the documents they have called for, right? Multimodal, bill of lading, non-negotiable seaway bill, charter party bill of lading, airway bill, road railway transport document, and then you have your courier receipt. So these are all the documents that is defined. But there are other documents which is used in relation to transportation, but it may not be your transport document. It is not defined under UCP 19 to 25. So they have given certain examples like delivery note, delivery order, cargo receipt, forwarder certificate of receipt. So if you take something, for example, like a forwarder's cargo certificate of receipt, what is it? A forwarder is coming in and they are receiving the goods from the actual shipper, and then they are giving you a receipt. They are giving that receipt to the shipper saying that they have collected the goods from the shipper. So that receipt, can that be a transport document? It cannot be a transport document. Why? Because they are going to just reach out to a transport company. They are going to sign into a contract of carriage, and then they will get a real transport document from the shipping company, which will be whatever the mode may be. If it is a C mode, they are going to get a bill of lading following this forwarded certificate of receipt. So this can never be a transport document, right? So that's why all these documents, if it is called for, we cannot treat that as a transport document as per Article 19 to 25. And how will you check that document? It is based on Article 14F, which says that whatever the context the credit gives you, that particular information you will be going ahead and checking it. And if in case any inconsistencies, if you can find it in this document with this within the document or with other documents or with credit UCP or ISBP, that is something which you can quote as a discrepancy. Nothing else you need to check. Any information which is shown, you can just proceed it as long as you don't have that information in the document. Any doubts here? Okay,
Abhilash,
I'll move
can
on.
you explain the cargo receipt part?
Yeah, that's what I explained now. So do you want me to repeat that?
Yeah. Because not clear.
Okay, okay, Chetan, right? Who asked this question? Chetan, right?
Yeah.
Chetan. Okay, Chetan, you are the beneficiary.
Yes,
Okay, you are
Chetan.
the beneficiary. Okay, now
Hmm.
you have a certain set of goods which you want to ship.
Right.
Now you can act as the shipper. You can reach out to a transport company, shipping
Hmm.
company. You can just sign into a contract of carriage, and then you will get a bill of lading. But
Right.
for certain reasons, you may not have that expertise. You may be good in manufacturing your own goods, but you may not have that expertise to ship the goods. So ideally, what you will do is you will find a freight forwarder who can help you in this shipment. So for
Okay.
example, if I'm that freight forwarder, what you will do is you will just reach out to me, say that this is where you want to ship it, this is what you want to ship it, and from this place to this place, this is what all the details you will be sharing with me. So what I will ideally do is, okay, you can hand over the goods to me. I will just give you a receipt. That is the freight forwarder's certificate of receipt, which says that I am the freight forwarder. I'm collecting so and so goods from you, and then I'm giving you a receipt that I've collected it. And that particular freight forwarder's cargo receipt will also say from where I'm going to take the goods to where I'm going to deliver the goods. I'm going to, and all the details from shipment details, everything will be there. But
Okay.
that is not a transport document for you, right? So what I will
Right.
do is, after taking the goods from you, I will reach out to a shipping company, and then I will collect an actual transport document, and that particular shipping company will ship the goods. Now, why you are
Okay.
choosing a freight forwarder in between us? Maybe they will have the competitive edge over you regards to pricing. They may,
Right.
because they are frequently into this business, they may get better pricing, and also they may endlessly, they may have seamless information about where they should do what, and they may be aware of how to take it and how to sign into a contract of carriage. They will have every arrangement in place which you may not have. Not, it's not necessarily that everyone will not have this. Most of the corporate giants will have expertise in handling the contract of carriage, directly signing into a contract with the shipping company. But there are few entities who prefer reaching out to a freight forwarder instead of shipping company. So in that cases, freight forwarder will give that receipt. That may be the document which you will be able to present as a beneficiary. You may not get the actual transport document. So in that case, you will call for that as a document. You will inform the applicant to just say the allowed transport document is freight forwarder's cargo receipt. But when that is presented, you cannot apply Article 19 to 25 to check the document as a banker.
Okay. So in that case, that cannot be considered as a transport document.
Correct.
So it will be called as a discrepancy then.
No. See, that can be a transport document, but it is not a document which is defined as per 19 to 25. So you cannot
Okay.
apply any of this article to check the document.
Okay. So authenticity and all cannot be checked through the article which we learned last week.
Authenticity of what?
If a cargo receipt can be considered as a transport document in absence of BL, so as per UCP, we cannot check the authenticity or the signing authorities and all, right?
Signing, there is no requirement. If credit documentary credit clearly gives you that as to who should sign it, then you can check it. If it is silent, even without a signature, you will be able to accept it, provided it is not a forward certificate of transport. If it is a certificate of shipment or certificate of transport, you know all the certificates should be signed. You should have a
Yes.
signature,
Right.
but who should do it, we will not know.
Correct. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other doubts for anyone?
Abhilash, that cargo receipt,
Yeah.
mat receipt, all are same in the same, all are same, or what about that mat receipt or something?
See, mate receipt is a document which is issued by the commanding ship officer to the recipient. So it is not a transport document, it is a tentative document which shows the details of what are all the goods that is on board the vessel. So it is not a transport document for you. So each document which is listed here is a different document. As it delivery note is a different document, delivery order is a different document, cargo receipt, forward is certificate of receipt. Every single document is a different document in nature. There are few documents which is similar in nature as well, but each are different. But one thing which you want to understand is it is not something which is defined in UCP. So mate's receipt is a document which is a tentative document which is issued by that captain to that particular shipper. So what they will ideally give you the information is that you will have the details of the shipment as to when it is onboarded, what is being collected from you, all those details will be there. But if you treat that as a transport document and try to take the delivery of the goods at the destination, you will not be able to take the delivery of the goods. They will not allow you to take it because it is not a transport document on its own. Because based on that, there will be another transport document issued actually at the back end.
Okay, sure.
Got
Thanks,
it?
Abhilash. Yeah, got it.
Yeah. Okay, for documents referred to in paragraph A18A, the condition of a credit that presentation is to occur with a certain number of days after the date of shipment will be disregarded, and presentation may be made at any time but in any event no later than the expiry date of the credit. The default presentation period of 21 days stated in UCP 600 14C only applies to a presentation including one or more original transport document covered by UCP article 19 to 25. So the presentation period, so if you're saying it is from the shipment date, it will be disregarded because in the first place, we are not considering any of the above as transport document. So only in transport document, if we find a shipment date, that will be an actual shipment date for you. That's why any presentation period in regards to given with a calculation as a context with the shipment date, we will not take it. Similarly, if one of the transport document between 19 to 25 is called for, even if credit is silent regarding what is a presentation period, automatically by default it will be 21 days, 21 calendar days from the date of shipment, right? Here in this case, it will not be applicable because it is not one of those documents. I'll give you an example. Yeah. So we are calling for a freight forwarder certificate of receipt issued by All-in-One Limited indicating receipt of the goods. Now, if they are specifically giving a presentation period, it will not be applicable because this 21 days would mean 21 days from the shipment date. It will not be applicable. Like if they want to precisely give any details of presentation period, then they have to precisely say like this: documents to be presented within 21 days after the date of freight forwarder certificate of receipt. This is something which is precise. We know that we should calculate 21 days from the issue date of the freight forwarder certificate of receipt, and then within that the document should be presented. In this case, we can take it. Otherwise, we will disregard it. We will accept the presentation anything which is within the expiry date of the credit. For a presentation period to apply to a document referred to in paragraph A18A, the credit should specify that presentation is to be made with a certain number of days after the issuance date of the respective document, or a date that is to be mentioned in the document. For example, when a credit requires presentation of a document titled cargo receipt, documents to be presented no later than 10 days after the date of cargo receipt. So this is what we saw in the example. So if it is clearly given from the issuance date of that specific document, which is not a transport document, then we'll be able to. The idea is that since you are not considering this as a transport document, you will not have a shipment date. Then how will you calculate this presentation period if they're saying it is so and so date from the shipment date? That's the first thing. Second thing is we are not applying any logic here. We are just checking the document as per 14F. So we will not be able to identify or apply the default presentation period as well. They have, if they wanted to apply something, they have to precisely give the period for presentation. Is it clear? Okay, moving on. Expressions not defined in UCP 600. The expressions shipping documents, tail documents acceptable, third-party documents acceptable, third-party documents not acceptable, exporting country, shipping company, and documents acceptable as presented should not be used in a credit as they are not defined in UCP 600. If nevertheless they are used and their meaning is not defined in the credit, they shall have the following meaning under international banking, standard banking practice. So these are all some of the expressions you will commonly see in a letter of credit transaction. So they may say that all the shipping documents should evidence the specific details. This is something which is very common. They will use this, but what ISBP says is it is not something which is defined in UCP. Such an expression is not defined in UCP. So they are, in the first place, discouraging banks from using this. Okay. Similarly, stale documents acceptable, third-party documents acceptable, exporting country, shipping company, because it may be giving you multiple meaning. They are asking you not to use these terms, but because they have been constantly using it, all the banks have been constantly using it based on the customer's request. ISBP came forward in explaining this specific. They have picked up a certain set of expressions, and then they have given a meaning. That is, if these expressions are used in a letter of credit with no further context, then it would mean the following, whatever we are going to read through now. So shipping documents mean all documents required by the credit except draft, teletransmission reports, and courier receipts, postal receipts, or certificate of posting evidencing the sending of documents. So shipping documents can include all the documents, all the commercial documents, but it cannot include the financial document. Draft is an exception. And one more document is an exception. Yesterday we saw this document. That is courier receipt or postal receipt, certificate of posting, evidencing the sending of documents instead of goods. If it is sending the goods, it will become a transport document for you. Then it will also become part of the shipping document. But if they are using a courier receipt to send some documents, then it will be not a transport document, and it will also become an exception, including draft. Okay. So when they, for example, if they're saying shipping documents to evidence so and so detail, it would mean that that particular detail should appear in all the documents except draft and this specific document. Next is stale documents acceptable. So stale documents acceptable, what does that mean? Documents may be presented later than 21 calendar days after the date of shipment, as long as they are presented no later than the expiry date of the credit. This will also apply when the credit specifies a period for presentation together with the condition stale documents acceptable. So they should be not using this term. Whenever they use this, even if credit specifically giving you the period for presentation, it will not be applicable. This would mean stale documents would mean the documents can be presented any time before the expiry date. That is the meaning, you will get it. So if you see here, for example, if in additional condition they are saying stale documents are acceptable, and then they are also giving you a presentation period. Okay, what happens is automatically this presentation period will not apply. The documents can be presented anytime within the expiry of the credit. So even if you specifically give the presentation period, it will not be valid. This will make that other requirement null and void. Next is third-party documents acceptable. All documents for which the credit or UCP 600 do not indicate an issuer except drafts may be issued by a named person or entity other than the beneficiary. Now, does this have any meaning at all? Like even after them giving this meaning. So for example, what they are saying is all documents for which the credit or UCP 600 do not indicate an issuer, except drafts may be issued by a named person or entity other than the beneficiary. So it is very common, right? So even if you don't have this condition, it means that anyone for any document for which the credit or UCP 600 does not define an issuer, it can still be issued by any person, including the beneficiary, right? Now, for example, you take what are all the documents for which credit has given you the issuers? Can anyone tell me?
Invoice, draft,
For invoice, okay, draft,
Insurance.
Water. Okay.
That's all.
Invoice, draft, insurance. Beneficiary certificate.
Beneficiary certificate is to be issued by beneficiary only. Name suggests.
Correct. So, except these 4 documents, is there any document for which UCP has defined an issuer? No, right? So, invoice should be issued by beneficiary. Draft should be issued by beneficiary. Insurance document should be issued by insurer or the
Proxy.
Agent.
Hello, Abhilash.
Abhilash? Yeah, I think he got logged out.
Can you assign me as host?
Okay.
Just rejoin. Sorry.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. So, what were we discussing?
Insurance
Okay,
documents.
third party. Yeah.
Insurance
So,
document.
for few documents, we have the issuers clearly specified by the UCP, right? For few documents, credit will give you the issuer. For example, if packing list or any other documents which is called for, if credit is specifically saying that this is the person ABC or XYZ person to issue that document, then that person should issue the document. So the rest of the document, who can issue it? Anyone can issue it, including beneficiary. Anyone can issue it, right? So it is giving you the same meaning. So this particular condition is of no use. Even if you give it, it is of no use. So similarly, third-party documents not acceptable. They are saying has no meaning and it is to be disregarded. For me, both of these clauses does not have any meaning at all. So even if you try to interpret it, even if you don't have this clause, that is what it is, right? If UCP defines an issuer, no one else can issue it. Only that person should issue it. Only credit can supersede it. And then if credit specifically giving you an issuer, anyone else cannot issue that. That specific issuer should issue it. So even if you have third-party documents acceptable or third-party documents not acceptable, it is of no use. So you can straight away go ahead. But from exam perspective, if you get the question for third-party documents acceptable, this is the definition for you. For which credit or UCP does not indicate an issuer except draft, it can be issued by anyone. So draft should always be issued by beneficiary. Okay. Next is exporting country.
One minute, Abhilash. Just want to clarify. Any certificate can be issued by beneficiary, right? If LC is silent, right? Inspection,
Yes.
fumigation, whatever,
Yes.
analysis, packing list, everything, right?
Yes, if they specifically say that it should be issued by an independent person, and then there are certain definitions which we have read, right? So if that is the case, in that case, beneficiary cannot issue it. If the context is clear that they don't want the beneficiary to issue it, then we will look for the other person to issue it. But if it is silent, simply calling for a certificate of origin or certificate of inspection, beneficiary can issue it.
One more thing. What I was like, if LC says third party documents are acceptable, and still beneficiary has issued all these other documents, then also it's fine, right?
So even if it is saying acceptable or not acceptable, when it is say certificate of inspection, do you have a defined issuer as per UCP for certificate of inspection?
No, we
Do you
don't.
have if your credit is silent regarding who should issue it, with or without you having this clause, anyone including the beneficiary can issue it, right?
Okay. Okay. I was just trying
So that's why I said it does not have any meaning at all.
Yeah, okay. One more request, like in between, if with these certificates are really confusing for me. So if you can put some question in between, that will be really helpful.
Questions, you will usually have it as a separate session where Sunil will be covering it. Because when we add a question, what happens is in that question there will be additional context which needs to be discussed, and we will be running out of time.
Okay, I understand.
That's the specific reason we give the example, we explain it to you so that you get the concept, and then you can further test your knowledge
Okay.
at the later part when the Q&A is happening.
Yeah, okay. No worries. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So it's clear, right? I'll move on. So exporting country, one of the following: the country where the beneficiary is domiciled, the country of origin of the goods, the country of receipt by the carrier, or the country from which shipment or dispatch is made. So it can give you multiple meaning. That's why satisfying this requirement can be easier. So for example, in the context of a documentary credit, when its terms and conditions may provide multiple possibilities as to exporting country, offers a definition whereby one of the following will be acceptable. They have given all this split, saying that where the beneficiary is located, origin of the goods, goods have been taken in charge or received by the carrier, goods from which the shipment has been made. In the context, if they are considering the possibilities based on the data shown below, when faced with the documentary credit with the condition as stated opposite, any of the stated countries may be considered as exporting country. For example, if beneficiary is from Belgium, goods origin is from Netherlands, shipment is effected from France, and goods are collected from Luxembourg. This is definitely probable, right? In case of offshore shipments, you will see that beneficiary is domiciled in a different place. Origin of the goods is different, and it is where it is shipped from to which place it is completely going to be different. It can definitely happen. So what happens is, for example, if they are asking a particular document to be issued in an exporting country, then in that case, that document can be issued in Belgium, Netherlands, France, or Luxembourg. Because it is giving you multiple meaning, satisfying this particular need can be multiplied into 4 different options, and then they can fulfill it. Next is shipping company. When used in the context of issuer of a certificate, certification, or declaration relating to a transport document, any one of the following: carrier, master, or when a charter party bill of lading is presented, the master, owner, or charterer, or any entity identified as an agent of any one of the aforementioned, regardless of whether it is issued or signed the presented transport document. So, for example, if they're asking for a certificate from a shipping company identifying the vessel's usage, now who can issue it? So, if it is also the same part of presentation, if you also have a bill of lading, then whomever has signed that bill of lading, carrier, master, if that is a charter party bill of lading, then master, owner, or charterer can issue this document, and also the agent who is signing on behalf of master or carrier can also issue this document. One more additional thing is, like, for example, if Abhilash is acting as agent on behalf of Sunil the carrier, okay, if that is how the actual transport document is issued, then Abhilash can issue this shipping company document, Sunil can issue it, or a third person, for example, Ekta, acting on behalf of Sunil, who is the carrier, can issue this document. Also a third party agent, still if they are acting on behalf of the carrier, can issue the document. So when we are talking about a shipping company, this is how we should interpret that. Final one is documents acceptable as presented. A presentation may consist of one or more of the stipulated documents, provided that they are presented within the expiry date of the credit, and the drawing amount is within that which is available under the credit. The document will not otherwise be examined for a complaints under the credit or UCP 600, including whether they are present in the required number of originals or copies. Now, this is the most dangerous condition to use if you are the applicant and you don't understand the meaning of it. Why so? Because if you split this and read it, you will get to know what is the actual meaning it is going to give you as per Isbp. If at all you don't have any further context clearly given in credit, if they are simply using it, the term saying that documents are acceptable as presented, then it would mean that, for example, if I'm calling for an invoice in 2 originals, packing list in 2 originals, and bill of lading in 3 originals. Now, what can be presented is just a packing list, okay, in a photocopy would make that presentation credit compliant, provided that it is presented within the expiry date and they are not overdrawing the LC. If LC value is $1,000, they cannot claim 1,500. The LC, it should be within the LC value. It should be below 1,000. And then if LC expiry date, for example, if it is 15th of Jan, it should be before 15th of Jan. That's the only requirement. They need not present all the documents. Even one copy of one of the call for document would do. How did we interpret into this different meaning? That is, first thing, if you split this and read it, they are saying a presentation may consist of one or more of the stipulated documents. That is, I'm calling for 3 different documents, out of which only one document would be more than enough. Now, if they are presented within the expiry and if they are not overdrawing, then final paragraph it also says that the documents will not be otherwise be examined for complaints under the credit or use exemption, including whether they are presented in the required number of originals or copies. So, for example, if you are an applicant and you need any document, so if your intention is to just waive off some general discrepancies, then in that case, you should not use this term because they may not present the required documents at all in the first place. That's why it is always suggested not to use these expressions which is not defined in UCP, but if in case you use it, this is what the meaning it would give. Is it clear? Any questions here? Any questions from anyone? Okay, if no questions, I'll move on. Issuer of documents. When a credit requires a document to be issued by a named person or entity, this condition is satisfied when the document appears to be issued by the named person or entity by use of its letterhead, or when there is no letterhead, when the document appears to have been completed or signed by or on behalf of the named person or entity. So if I'm asking Abhilash to issue this document, okay, if documentary credit is asking Abhilash to issue a document, how can Abhilash prove that he is the one who has issued it? Abhilash can use his letterhead to issue the document. Or if there is no letterhead at all, Abhilash can sign that document along with the name of the person who is signing it. That would be an intimation to the person who is checking the document that it is Abhilash who has issued that document. Okay. If you see, certificate issued by express line stating that the carrying, so whatever the additional details are. So we understand that it is express line who should issue this document. Now here there is a signature, right? Here you have a signature here, right? In this signature part, it is proving, and it is also having a letterhead saying that it is Express Line Limited, any road, any city. This is the name and address of the company. So if you have a letterhead, you don't need the signature, okay? And at times, if you don't have a letterhead, then signature would become mandatory. That is the only proof that this person has issued this document. Okay, so either using a letterhead or through signature, you can prove that it is you who is issuing this document.
Oh, but yesterday we read that all the certificate which are to be presented should be signed, right? So if it is on letterhead and signature is not there, then it's becoming contradictory, right?
No, because it is a certificate, they have also signed it here. For example, they are asking for a packing list issued by Express Line Limited. Then only letterhead would do, signature is not required. So that's why they have signed as well as issued in the letterhead.
Okay, if the name is certificate, then it should be signed.
It should be signed, yes.
The document type is certificate, then it should be signed.
It should definitely be signed if it is a certificate. Okay. For example, if it is a packing list or any other document which does not require a signature, then only with the letter they can prove that this person is the issuer.
Okay.
No need of a signature.
Any report, let's say some report is called for, let's say analysis report or some report has been called for. it does not require it does not require signed if it is issued on a letterhead.
Not required. Analysis is something for which you will have a result in place, not a statement or a certificate. So if it is just going to show you the result, the signature is not mandatory, the letterhead would suffice.
So basically, we should remember that if word certificate is coming in picture, then it should be signed anyhow, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Always, all the certificates, declarations, and statements are to be signed.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. Next is language. When a credit stipulates the language of the documents to be presented, the data required by the credit or UCP 600 are to be in that language. So if credit specifically says that this is the language in which, for example, if credit says that documents are to be presented in English, then what you have to understand is the data required by the credit or UCP are to be in that language. The other details can be in different language. That's not your worry. Okay. For example, if in invoice, what are all the details you will definitely need to look into? Goods description. Okay, if it is made out to applicant, whether it is issued by the beneficiary, the currency details, all these details in a title which is given, it should be, for example, if there is a restriction, it should be in English. The other details can be in other language. But the data required to be checked by a document checker should be in the language restricted by the document credit. When a credit is silent with respect to the language of the documents to be presented, the documents may be issued in any language. If in case credit is silent, then the document presented can be in any language. Okay. When a credit allows 2 or more acceptable languages, a confirming bank or nominated bank acting on its nomination may restrict the number of acceptable languages as a condition of its engagement in the credit, and in such case, the data contained in the documents are only to be in that acceptable language or languages. Okay, if I'm the issuing bank, I'm saying documents are acceptable in English and Mandarin. Okay, if Sunil is the confirming bank, so before adding his confirmation, he is just saying that if I have to be engaged and then if I have to extend my confirmation to this letter of credit, I would need the documents to be presented only in English but not in Mandarin. He can definitely do that. If there is a restriction which is imposed as part of the conditional undertaking that he is going to add, then in that case, the documents are to be presented in that only English language. Okay. When a credit allows a document to contain data in 2 or more acceptable languages, and a confirming bank or a nominated bank acting on its nomination does not restrict the language or the number of acceptable languages as a condition of its engagement in the credit, it is required to examine the data in all the acceptable languages appearing in the documents. So we'll take the same example. I am the issuing bank. I'm just having restrictions saying that the documents can be presented in English as well as in Mandarin, but not in any other language. Now, Sunil adding his confirmation does not have the expertise to check the documents in Mandarin. Okay, but he forgot to, or he did not realize that there is a restriction in this documentary credit, and is also giving an additional option for the beneficiary to present the documents in Mandarin. If he misses to notice this, and then by any chance if he is not communicating this restriction to the beneficiary, then if the beneficiary is presenting the documents in Mandarin, with or without the capability of checking the documents in Mandarin, Sunil should act under this obligation. So that's why this nominated confirming bank should be very careful. If any language is given as a restriction, and then if they're having an additional optional languages, the nominated bank before acting on the nomination and the confirming bank before extending the confirmation should be clearly reading it and then adding that restriction and communicating that to the beneficiary. Banks do not examine data that have been inserted in a language that is additional to that required or allowed in the credit. So the data, the first paragraph we read, and we already identified that the data which is not required by the credit can be in any language because of this paragraph. This paragraph also says that banks do not examine the data that have been inserted in a language that is additional to that required or allowed in the credit. So we don't check, we don't read at all. So that's why we don't have a restriction that data which is not required by the credit to be restricted to that language. It can be in any language. Notwithstanding paragraph A21A and D, the name of a person or entity, any stamps, legalization, endorsements, or similar, and the pre-printed text shown on a document such as but not limited to field headings may be in a language other than that required in a credit. So there are some exceptions to it as well. That is the name of the person. For example, if I have Chinese people may have two different names. If I'm not sure whether you're all aware of it. If at all they are studying English in a financial institution, they are given another name, which is also an official name for them. But typically they'll be born with a own Cantonese name. That is something which cannot be changed, right? So if that name is to be written in that particular language, it will be written in that language. You cannot change it, right? So if that is given in that particular language, we cannot say that it should be changed. And then similarly, stamps, legalization, endorsement. So for example, if my country's official language is not English, then my stamp, legalization, endorsement will be in that own language, their own language. We cannot say just because I'm issuing an LC, your country's regulation should change and you should have a chop in that English language. No, they will not have it. So that's why we will have these things as an exception. Any pre-printed text, legalization, endorsement, stamps can be in different languages. For that particular reason, we cannot say that the documents are in different language to what is restricted in the document regulated, and you cannot put that as a discrepancy. That is not allowed. Those are all always the exception. So any doubts? Okay, no doubt. I'll move on. Mathematical calculations. When the presented document indicate mathematical calculations, banks only determine that the stated total in respect of criteria such as amount, quantity, weight, or number of packages does not conflict with the credit or any other stipulated document. The simple thing, banks do not involve themselves in a mathematical calculation. What they will ideally check is whether the total is matching with the documentary creditors need, and then they will go ahead with it in respect of whatever the detail it may be. That is in terms of amount, the quantity, weight, or number of packages. All these things, it should not conflict with the credit or any other stipulated document. That's what. For example, the stated total in one document says gross weight as 1,500 kgs. In other document, it says the gross weight as 1,505 kgs. It will be a discrepancy for you. Only the total you will check, but the detailed line by line item you will not be checking it, and even for that matter, the simplest calculation of addition and subtraction also will not be able. We will not do it. Banks will only go with the stated total. Misspelling or typing errors. A misspelling or typing error that does not affect the meaning of a word or the sentence in which it occurs does not make a document descriptive. For example, a description of the goods shown as machine instead of machine, fountain pen instead of fountain pen, or model instead of model would not be regarded as a conflict of data under UCP 600 subarticle 14D. However, a description shown as, for example, model 123 instead of model 321 will be regarded as a conflict of data under that subarticle. So ideally what they are communicating here is any misspelling if you have or any typing errors, it is definitely be there. Like if you're going to type a document, if you're going to create a document, once in a while you may have some typing errors. You may have some misspellings in that particular document. What you should ideally see is whether it is changing the meaning of that particular sentence or a word. If it is changing the meaning, then it will be a discrepancy. If it is not changing a meaning, if it is not giving you any additional information, then it is not a discrepancy. You can treat it as a misspelling or a typing error, and then you can disregard. For example, here if you see, they're saying fountain pen instead of fountain pen, right? Now, fountain is not going to give you any additional meaning. There is no word as such, so you can disregard and you can move on. But instead of pen, if they are saying pan, the description itself is changing. That you can quote that as a discrepancy. And again, in specifically, they have given us another example. Model 123 instead of model 321 would be a discrepancy. Why? Because these numbers, this numeral, numbers which is given as a unique reference to any specific content or any specific description, like a pro forma invoice number, or any specifically if it is given for a model number as such, it will be giving entirely different meaning if they are changing that unique reference. So such numbers cannot be changed. Definitely, the moment you see instead of 1 to 3, if it is a 3 to 1, straight away it is a discrepancy. because we are not sure whether they're going to have another model entirely different if the number is changed. So that will always be a discrepancy. So ideally, what you should understand is whether it is giving a different meaning altogether, whether it is going to add a different description of goods or a different sentence or a word with different meaning. Then in that case, you will quote it as a discrepancy. Otherwise, simply disregard all those misspelling or typing errors. Any doubts? Okay. No, I'll move on. Multiple pages and attachments are raided. When a document consists of more than one page, it must be possible to determine that the pages are part of the same document. Unless a document provides otherwise, pages which are physically bound together, sequentially numbered, or contain internal cross-references, however named or titled, will meet this requirement and are to be examined as one document even if some of the pages are regarded as an attachment or rider. When a signature or endorsement is required to be on a document consisting of more than one page, and the credit or the document itself does not indicate where a signature or endorsement is to appear, the signature or endorsement may appear anywhere on the document. Okay. Now, I'll give you an example. If invoice is the required document, okay, if you are calling for an invoice and you have 3 pages of invoice. Now, how can all these be considered as one single document? There are few ways, right? As saying pages which are physically bound together. Okay, what is that? To solve together, placed one after the other. If it is physically bound, then it can be considered as one single document, right? And then sequentially numbered. If it is having page number 1, 2, and 3, if it is sequentially numbered, then that can also give you a meaning that it is one single document, right? Or contain internal cross references. What is that? For example, if it is saying continued from the previous paragraph of this, or if it is saying that continuation of a specific page or content from the first page of the invoice, then in that such cross references can also mean that it is one single document. So however name or title, you should be taking that as one single document, but not different documents. That's how you do it. And then if in case, so I have just given an example as invoice, so let me go with the invoice itself. So if documentary credit is asking for a signed invoice, now where should the signature be? Ideally, what you will all think is that it should be in the third page where they are finally signing it. Not necessarily. If credit specifically says that the last page you need a signature, then that is where we need a signature. But if credit is silent regarding where you need the signature, it can be anywhere, even on the first page, second page, or third page. Can be anywhere, no restrictions. Is it clear? I'll move on. Non-documentary conditions and conflict of data. When a credit contains a condition without stipulating a document to indicate complaint service, non-documentary condition, complaints with such condition need not be evidence on any stipulated document. However, data contained in a stipulated document are not to be in conflict with the non-documentary condition. For example, when a credit indicates packing in wooden cases, without indicating that such data is to appear on any stipulated documents, a statement in any stipulated document indicating a different type of packing is considered to be a conflict of data. So what is a non-documentary condition? You have this condition in additional conditions, 47A, but it does not pertain to any of the document called for. For example, if they are calling for only invoice and transport document, bill of lading. Okay. Now, in 47A, there is a condition which is added saying that goods are of Chinese origin. Now, is this a mandatory information that you will check in an invoice or a transport document? Definitely not, right? It is an information which we will look for only in certificate of origin, which is mandatory. If only credit says that they have to look for this information, then does that mean? That does make sense to have some meaning to it. But if credit is also silent regarding that, then what and how you will check that is you will disregard that. But if in case invoice or transport document is showing that information, that is to the origin of goods, it cannot have a conflicting information. If at all they are showing invoice they are showing goods are of Chinese origin of goods as China, we'll take it. But if invoice is showing origin of goods as India, then in that case it will be a discrepancy. Otherwise, you can simply disregard it. You need not even check for the complaints whether this document is showing that. I'll see if I have an example. Okay. So they are calling for a packing list. Okay. And then in additional conditions, packing to be in corrugated boxes. Now, if they're calling for a packing list and then saying packing to be in corrugated boxes, it makes sense. It is a documentary condition for you. But 1 month. If they are not calling for a packing list, but they're calling for an invoice, or they're calling for a okay, I think the paragraph is okay. We'll change the example. I'll try to verbally explain it to you. So, for example, if you are instead of consider this document required as invoice, and then they are saying packing to be in corrugated boxes. Is packing condition mandatory in invoice? It is definitely not. Okay. Now, if invoice is presented, consider this document as invoice. Now, instead of corrugated boxes, if this invoice is showing this information packed in individual boxes, okay, within plastic cases, then it is a wrong information because they wanted corrugated boxes. Now, this is contradicting to what is required in the documentary product. Now, what you should ideally do is, if it is an invoice, you don't need this information at all. They can definitely ignore this, and then they can stay silent regarding this information. But if if at all they are giving this information, then it should be consistent with the DC requirement. That's how you treat a non-documentary condition. Any doubts for anyone? Okay, no doubt. I'll move on. Originals and copies. A document bearing an apparently original signature, mark, stamp, or label of the issuer will be considered to be an original unless it states that it is a copy. Banks do not determine whether such a signature, mark, stamp, or label of the issuer has been applied in a manual or email form on. As such, any document bearing such method of authentication will be satisfied. Method of authentication will satisfy the requirements of UCP 600, Article 17. So what you will consider as an original document, any document which is having an original signature, mark, stamp, or the label of the issuer will be straightaway considered as an original unless the document itself says that it is a copy. If document is having a signature and it is also calling itself as a copy, then it will not be an original, even if it is having an original signature. Now, banks do not determine whether such a signature, mark, stamp, or label of the issuer has been applied in a manual, email form. As such, any document bearing such method of authentication will satisfy. So we already knew what are all the forms in which they can sign it: manual, email form, perforated signatures, stamp, mark, label, anything is fine. Electronic method of authentication, anything is fine. So if you have a signature, or if you don't even have a signature for certain documents for which you don't need a signature, in that case, unless the document itself calls for as calling itself as a copy, we will consider that as an original. Documents issued in more than one original may be marked original, duplicate, triplicate, first original, second original, etc. None of these markings will disqualify a document as an original. So what they are saying is original is the first copy, duplicate is the second copy, triplicate is the third copy. But generally, why they are specifically giving this paragraph is that sometimes we may tend to think that duplicate is not an original, which is not the case. Duplicate means the second original all the time. Triplicate is also an original. So either they are giving it as original, duplicate, or triplicate, or first original, second original, or third original. It will not disqualify the document from being an original. It is all original. Remember that. Okay. The number of originals to be presented it is to be at least the number required by the credit or UCP 600. So if someone asks you how many originals a document to be presented in, you should say that how many originals it is called for as per the credit or UCP, that is the requirement. If credit says that we need a specific document in 5 originals, then it is required to be present in 5 originals. When a transport document or insurance document indicate how many originals have been issued, the number of originals stated on the document is to be presented, except as stated in paragraph H12 and J7C. So, any transport document, if it is issued in more than one original, it should be presented in more than one original. So that H12 and J7 paragraph will be talking about an airway bill and a stored transport document, which you already know that we will only need the shipper copy, but not all the originals, right? For the remaining transport documents, you will definitely need all the originals to be presented to the bank. Similarly, for insurance document, you don't have any exceptions. If it is issued in more than one original, okay, all the originals should be presented to the bank, unless and until they give you clear-cut instructions of the remaining originals and whereabouts of it. And if they have any specific needs or information given in the document credit saying that the second and third original to go to the applicant or any specific person, then it should be going there, not to the bank. If that information is not available, if it is issued in more than one original, all the originals should be presented to the bank. When a credit requires presentation of less than a full set of original transport documents, for example, 2/3 original bill of lading, but does not provide any disposal instruction for the remaining original bill of lading, a presentation may include 3/3 original bills of lading. So, if you are calling for one set less, okay, if the full set is 3 original, you are saying 2/3 originals to be presented. Ideally, what we should think about is we should understand as to whereabouts of the other original. That is the bare minimum thing that you should do at the issuance stage. But if in case that is missed out, if DC only says that only 2/3 originals to be presented without the disposal instruction of the remaining original, in that case, the presentation can include all 3 originals. Not necessarily they should only present two. All 3 originals can be presented to the bank itself. When a credit requires, for example, presentation of invoice in one copy, or invoice one copy, it will be understood to be a requirement for an original invoice. So always see this. If they're saying invoice in one copy, or invoice one copy, if it is following, this one copy is following this invoice, then it will be an original. Okay. Invoice in 4 copies or invoice in 4 fold will be satisfied with presentation of at least one original invoice and any remaining number as copies. So if they are calling for a document in multiple folds, what happens is at least one should be original. The remaining can be copies. Okay. So here, if they're saying invoice in 4 copies or invoice in 4 folds, it means that we need minimum of 1 original and 3 copies. They can also present 4 originals. No restrictions there. But the minimum requirement is 1 original and the remaining can be copies. Photocopy of invoice. Copy of invoice will be satisfied by presentation of either a photocopy, copy, or when not prohibited, an original. This is where I said. So if the photocopy is the word coming in front of invoice, if it is coming as a prefix, if they're saying photocopy of an invoice or a copy of an invoice, this would mean that they require a photocopy, not an original. But if there is no restrictions in the DC, they can also present an original. If DC says only photocopy to be presented, then we don't have any other option. Photocopy of a signed invoice will be satisfied by the presentation of either a photocopy or a copy of the original invoice that was apparently signed, or when not prohibited, a signed original invoice. So at times there is a possibility they are asking for a photocopy of a signed invoice. So what you would need, either an original invoice that was apparently signed or a photocopy that is apparently signed, you will take it. If no prohibition in the DC, then you will also take an original invoice which is signed. So signature is mandatory. When a credit prohibits the presentation of an original document by stating, for example, photocopy of invoice, original document not acceptable in lieu of a photocopy or the like, only a photocopy of an invoice or an invoice marked copy is to be presented. So this is what I was referring to. If in case there is a restriction in the DC, if DC is calling for a photocopy of invoice, and then they are also saying that original is not acceptable in lieu of photocopy, in that case, only photocopy to be presented. Why so? Because at times original, they will only issue this document in one original, and they will already have a need for that one original to be sent somewhere. For example, directly from the beneficiary to the applicant without using the bank's channel. So if that is the case, they already know that only photocopy is to be presented. So they wanted to avoid any originals to be presented. So that's why they will also add this condition restricting the original to be presented. When a credit requires a presentation of a copy of a transport document and indicates a disposal instruction for all the originals of the transport document, that document, a presentation is not to include any original of such document. For obvious reasons, right? So if you are saying original documents, okay, if credit only calls for a copy transport of, say for example, they are asking for a copy bill of lading, okay, and they're also giving you the disposal instruction saying that all the originals are to be directly sent by the beneficiary to the applicant. Now we know all the originals are with the applicant. If in case one original is presented to the bank, what does this mean? it is contradicting, right? It means that they are not submitting all the originals to the applicant. So it is directly contradicting with this disposal instruction. So it will become a discrepancy on its own. So that's in that case, we will only accept a copy transport document, but not originals. Original documents are to be signed when required by the credits, the document itself or UCP 600. So original documents are definitely needs to be signed. This is not applicable for photocopies. Okay. So they are also saying when it is required by the credit document itself or UCP 600. So if credit is silent, invoice, should the invoice be signed? Should the original invoice be signed if the credit is not asking for?
No.
Okay. Should the draft be signed?
Draft
Yes.
has to be signed.
Certificates?
Yes.
Yeah.
Photocopy of a certificate?
Yes.
No.
It need not be signed. Insurance document original?
Signed. Should be signed.
Transport document original?
Should be signed.
Yes.
Photocopy of an insurance?
No.
Perfect. So all the original documents are to be signed only when it is required by the credit document itself or UCP 600. Okay. Copies of documents need not be signed even when a credit states that all documents are to be manually signed. So if you have a provision in an additional condition saying that all the documents are to be manually signed, okay, it means that all the original documents, even if they are not using the word original, and simply they are having a condition saying all the documents are to be manually signed, we will only apply that logic to original documents. So copies of documents need not be signed at all. Copies of documents need not be dated again. Okay, the same logic. For photocopies, we don't look for a date or a signature. So I'll stop here. Should I continue?
Abhilash, I think you can stop on.
Okay, sure.
I think yesterday we had 18. I don't know, some reason we have less attendance today. So if
Sure,
you think,
we can stop, no problem.